Back here for hour number 2 on a Friday, and that can only mean one thing. Senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, joining us, also co-host of ESPN's NFL Matchup Show. And Greg Cosell's weekly appearance on One Bills Live is presented by Pepsi. Pepsi is the official soft drink of the Buffalo Bills. Food deserves Pepsi. All right, Greg, Bills coming off the bye here. They are 8-0 under McDermott coming off the bye. But they're facing a Carolina team that has won 3 straight, unbeaten at home. So I guess on the surface, I want to start with the task that Buffalo's run defense is going to have with what has now become a two-headed monster with Hubbard and Dowdle. I don't know about you, but I was stunned. And I understand that Dave Canales has to walk the line here a little bit because Hubbard is a respected veteran in that locker room. But the way Dowdle has performed since he moved into the starting lineup when Hubbard was out injured, I don't know how Dowdle is not getting 100% of the work with as productive as he has been.
I can't answer that, Brownie.
He's been dynamic.
I can answer. Yeah. No, he certainly. Look, the 2 games prior, what did he have? 483, I think it was, total yards.
Yeah.
The last time that had happened, or something like that had happened, was, I think, 2011. Do you know the back that did that?
Was that Adrian Peterson?
Nope.
No.
It's a name that appeared to be moving toward greatness and then made a very bad decision.
Chris Johnson or who?
Nope. Le'Veon Bell.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. But anyway, I can't speak to what's in Dave Canales' head, but clearly the foundation of what they have to do on offense, and it appears that it will be Andy Dalton, who, I got to be honest with you, I think he's a little more concerning than Bryce Young, but that's just my sense of it.
Steve felt the same way.
I said the same thing to Brownie. I'm all over that. You're going to have a hard time fooling him. He's not as athletic as Bryce Young, no question, but he knows how to use the kind of receivers that the Carolina Panthers have. I mean, he can, I haven't seen him throw. His ability to see it and throw the ball, I think, is better than Bryce Young's right now.
I would agree with that. And, Young, for what his traits are, given his size, doesn't have a big arm, he's played well, no question. It looks like he's an incrementally improving player. But Andy Dalton's been in the league. He's seen everything. I'm sure he's very, very familiar with the Sean McDermott defense. And I'm not suggesting he's going to throw for 350, guys. I'm just saying that you're dealing with a veteran quarterback who, he's not going to be seeing things he's never seen before. And if he can get into a rhythm, he can make throws. And they do not have a bad receiving core. I've been very impressed with the McMillan kid. He's essentially their boundary X. When he came out, you know how it is. When there's big receivers that come out, we all make comparisons. And right away, the comparison was made to Drake London, who's with the Falcons. And obviously, you guys just played recently. And he's a good player. And obviously it was a problem for you guys. But I thought just watching McMillan with his college tape relative to what, let's say, London was coming out, I thought McMillan's just a smoother, better mover. And he's not Justin Jefferson, but I thought on the spectrum of receivers that he moved more to that side of the middle line than to the London side. And we're looking at highlights, and you can see that he is a very good mover. And he's a little bit of a concern, I think.
Yeah, there is athletic fluidity to him. I'm just concerned about the overall size of the receiving core. I think Buffalo's corners, at least as they're constituted right now, might prefer a more physical matchup than one built on speed, and breakaway ability. So maybe this is a better matchup, but it's hard to ignore, Ted McMillan, 6'4", 220. Jalen Coker, 6'3", 213. Xavier Leggett, 6'3", 225. And then the tight ends are even bigger with Jatavian Sanders, and Tommy Tremble. There is size and physicality across the board in the passing game.
Without question. They're not an easy team to play against. We think of them because of what they've done in the last number of years as just being a bad team. But right now, they're playing pretty good football. They're staying in games. Their defense has played pretty well as well. So, it's funny. Bye weeks to me, and you're in the building, and Brownie, obviously, you do the game. So, I'm sure you're able to have conversations at times just because you need to know what's going on. I would look at this bye week as being much more about the Bills than about the opponent. Now, I'm not saying that they're not studying the opponent. Believe me, you always do that in the NFL. We know how it works. But I think that this really needed to be about the Bills because I think there are some things that I don't want to say need to be changed. That's not the right word. But what I'm struggling with, guys, and you tell me how you feel. I don't think this pass game is anywhere near conceptually what it needs to be. I think it's very short. It's very short to intermediate. There's no real intermediate pass game to really write home about. I mean, you've got the most gifted quarterback in the league, and I feel like he's being held back. And it's one thing to say we don't want any turnovers. I get that. And it obviously worked last year with he was the MVP, he only threw 6 interceptions. But I just feel like there's more in this pass game that needs to be developed.
So what do you think it is devoid of? What kind of concepts is this offense devoid of, in your opinion? Are we talking like flood concepts? What are we looking at?
Yeah, things like that. Things that attack more at the intermediate area, the vertical area. And by vertical, I don't mean dropping back and throwing 60-yard bombs. When I say vertical, I mean what you never see in this offense. And again, you can talk about receivers all day long. People listening might think, well, we don't have great receivers in Buffalo. That's fine if you're playing a high percentage man to-man defense where you feel like your guys can't separate one-on-one. But again, zone, to me, because I've seen it throughout the league over the years, I've been doing this for a long time, where you have route concepts and combinations that attack zone coverages where you expand them horizontally, you stretch them vertically, you find the stress points in the voids in zone coverage. You never see a deep dig in the Bills offense. I can't recall the last time I saw a deep dig thrown.
Right.
Maybe when Diggs was there, but I can't recall one in recent years where they threw a deep dig like you see with the Lions all the time. Those kinds of route concepts and combinations. And you've like I said, you've got a quarterback that is so gifted in terms of throwing the football. I feel like they're holding him back at times. They throw all those short routes and then expect run after catch.
Right. And is it possible that the philosophy of this offense and the way they're coordinated is a little bit of a reaction to a defense that's that's struggled a little bit, trying to keep this offense on the field, shorten the game, knowing that with Josh out there, they're going to have an expectation to be efficient and score on more drives than their opponent does. And if their opponent hiccups once on their own, even if their defense can't stop them, they're going to lose the game. Is that a possibility about going deeper?
It could be. I mean, look, you want to play complementary football, and I think we would probably all three of us agree that the defense hasn't consistently played to the level that they'd like it to play and hope that it gets to play. But the problem is, and Steve, you certainly know this. I mean, then you start playing all these close games, and close games. That becomes hard because one play here and there in the third or fourth quarter, and all of a sudden it seems like the game gets away from you a little bit. Look, even when they beat New Orleans, it just seemed, and again, I'm not no knock on New Orleans, obviously they've only won, I think, one game, but that game seemed like it had a closer feel to it than the final score. And then of course they lose 2 in a row, and it just seems like these games are too tight, and sometimes that happens in the NFL, but I understand your point, and they could be thinking that. They could be thinking that it's more important to control the pace and tempo of the games and sort of compensate and camouflage our defensive deficiencies than feel like we have to go out and score. But I just feel like maybe I'm old school in that way, Steve, and obviously you played with a team in your day where you just went out and scored, I mean,
it's easy enough to do that. If you can do that, it's fine in the first half and maybe the first half of the third quarter. But if you get out there, then start thinking about shortening the game in the second half as the game develops. Don't do it like out of the jump. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, Ogunjobi and Michael Hoecht are coming back onto the roster. Yeah. And we're going to get to them. But one thing I want to ask you, Max Hairston, is a fast, athletic, elite athlete. And Brownie and I have watched him since training camp and even in his rehabilitation here as he's working to get back on the field. Give us an idea, and maybe Bills fans an idea, of what, if he turns out to be this number 1 draft pick, and it is a really, really good corner and plays to his strengths, how big a difference can he make if he does step on the field and become that?
Well, I really liked his tape. I watched him for 2 years. I know he missed a little time in college as well when he got hurt at Kentucky, but I really liked his college tape, and I really like his traits. I mean, you're dealing with a guy that is, he played boundary corner at Kentucky for the most part. I thought that he was really strong in zone coverage, and I'm sure that's one reason they wanted to draft him and did draft him. I thought he had a great sense of pattern recognition and spatial awareness. I thought he had a great feel for the conflict areas that are inherent in zone. I thought that he did have some strong snapshots of playing mirror match press man coverage. He certainly has the athletic and physical traits to do that. I really like him a lot. Now, again, is he going to play this week?
Well, right
Probably
now
not,
he's still on IR,
Yeah.
but he looked good. He looked like he was moving well in practice this week. I mean, we'll see. They have an open roster spot right now that they have not yet utilized. So I think there's a decision to be made there here as we move into the weekend. Nothing concrete yet.
Right. Well, I would assume that when he is healthy, he's going to start. That would be my guess. He was a first-round pick. And, he fits what their defense is. So we'll see how that plays out. But I really liked him coming out quite a bit. The only concern that you had with him, and it's funny, you started out, Brownie, by talking about the size of the receivers for the Panthers, is that he's 5'11" and 183. That's what he was at the combine. But other than that, I thought his traits were really, really good in terms of zone, and he definitely can play man as well, but I thought he was really strong as a zone corner.
All right, let's talk about the return of Hoecht and Ogunjobi. Ogunjobi looks like he's going to slide right in for Daquan Jones, although he may not start. Maybe it's Deion Walker instead. But Ogunjobi is going to be a part of that rotation right off the rip with Jones out this week with the calf injury. But Hoecht was the signing that they've been tracking him for 2 years before they signed him this offseason in free agency, and they want to use him as a movable chess piece. Now that he's not the same weight that he was 3 or 4 years ago, he's down around 260. So how versatile do you see him as a front seven movable chess piece, Greg?
Well, that's the way he was deployed with the Rams, Brownie, and it'll be interesting because that's normally not the way that the Bills play defense. They pretty much are a straight 4-man D-line defense. They don't have a ton of movable pieces on that defense in terms of guys that play in a 3-point stance and 2-point stance. That's what I mean. So, obviously. Now, let me ask you a question. When he was suspended, is he allowed to practice?
He gets to practice
couple of weeks,
the last couple of weeks of the suspension. Yeah, he comes back into the building after 4 weeks.
Okay, so he's been able to practice for 2 weeks. So
not with,
and they just had a
yeah. He's been with the team. He can't be on the practice field with them until the suspension's up. But he can be in the building and he can train and whatever.
Okay. Well, the point I'm trying to get at is, and I think you guys agree, that's normally not stylistically how the Bills play defense, the way he was deployed with the Rams. So I'm very curious. I don't know the answer to this question, how they specifically are going to use him as a movable chess piece, because that's what he's really best at. He's a kind of a movement player. He can line up on the ball. He can line up off the ball. He can play with his hand in the ground. He can play in a 2-point stance. He can be used as kind of a joker at the second level and rush the quarterback in different ways. He can drop into coverage. So this is not the way normally this team plays defense. So I'm very curious because, look, they, like you said, Brownie, they were tracking him for 2 years. They have to have a plan for him. He's not just going to line up with his hand in the ground as a defensive end and say, rush the quarterback. They have to have a plan. And I'm sure they do. I certainly don't know what it is. And I'm very anxious to see how he's deployed.
Yeah. And so are we, and we've been looking forward to this, maybe helping the defense shift gears a little bit, get a little better in the run game, a little better in their pass rush, which, the ripple effects may be felt, even on the offensive side of the ball, as we talked about playing complementary football. I wanted to ask you a little bit about what the Bills went through just before they started the bye week. it's been rare that they have an outing where they look as bad as they did offensively against the Atlanta Falcons. 14 points is an aberration for this team. It's a 30-point-a-week offense, and they only scored 2 touchdowns against an Atlanta defense, and it looked like Josh wasn't seeing it. It looked like they had pressure on him. It looked like he didn't have any room to run. They couldn't find anybody open. And what was your
protect?
Yeah, they couldn't protect. What was your thoughts about how that Atlanta team beat the Bills like they did, particularly on the offensive side? And is Carolina going to get a blueprint from that?
Well, number one, I'm not necessarily a blueprint guy. I don't think that, Atlanta was a team coming into that game that so the last game they played obviously was week 6, right? That was the game, right? Because we just played week 7, they didn't play.
Right.
So Atlanta was a team that blitzed a ton. I think they had the highest blitz percentage in the league going into that game. And, I think that they played a ton of man coverage, and there's no question all this caused a problem. Atlanta, up to that point of the season, I thought that Jeff Ulbrich had done the best job of any defensive coordinator I had seen in creating free hitters at the quarterback. And you saw that on the Alford sack on 3rd and 8 early in the second quarter, the way they structured their fronts. I mean, it just seemed like they were able to generate pressure, with blitz. Even though if you just look at Allen's numbers versus blitz, they weren't terrible, but he was sacked 3 times. And here's what I typed, guys, and it goes back to the conversation we had 5 minutes ago. I said Bills' passing game was not a big factor in the game. They had no structured intermediate passing game, which has been a continuing issue. And, I guess my question is, and if Joe Brady was listening, maybe he'd tell me I'm totally wrong, and I'd love to be totally wrong, but I just didn't feel like watching that game, they had a lot of answers for what they were getting. Did you guys feel the same way?
Exactly.
Yes.
It felt exactly the same way.
Yeah, I don't.
And
yeah,
again,
I don't know if we were
say that's good or bad. I never say anything negative about coaches because I've been around too many training camps and I know how hard everybody works. So I never say, oh, they did a bad job. Sometimes games snowball and sometimes you just can't find a rhythm. And, Steve, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure you were part of games like that where for whatever reason, you're not comfortable, pretty much right from the start. And you just can't seem to find a comfort level and it just snowballs.
Yeah, it's easy to get snowballed, believe me.
Yeah. I think also we were a little surprised because Josh has got such a high football IQ. Usually he and McGovern have those protections pretty buttoned up. And even if he has a free rusher coming, he generally knows where that free rusher is coming from pre-snap and adjusts before he even has the ball in his hands. And it seemed like he was really caught off guard. And to your point about Ulbrich, Josh Allen has had 4 games in which he has been sacked at least 3 times and has had 2 turnovers. 4 games in his career. 3 of them have been against Ulbrich.
Well, that's a fact that I did not know, and that's a great point because, they rushed 5 or more on 18 of his 34 dropbacks. That's 53%, and you're 100% right. And what Ulbrich does, like I said, I mean, they were just free hitters that Josh was. I mean, that blitz that I mentioned by Alford, where they actually brought Diablo too, both from the backside. I guess they both came through the B gap. Josh was clearly surprised by that. And I was surprised that he was surprised. Let's put it that way.
That's where we were.
So that game, it was just one of those games. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it because you're right. You don't normally see Josh Allen look like that. And it looked like he was, I don't want to use the word confused because I don't know what's in his head, but he certainly didn't see things the way he normally does.
So, and in saying that, the second part of my question, Carolina, with their different strengths and weaknesses the Atlanta Falcons have, their defensive talent is at different spots. Brown, their defensive tackle, is a really good guy. They may, lean on him a little more and therefore do some different things. But certainly the Carolina Panthers are going to test the Bills' ability to decipher their blitz packages,
without question.
Correct? Yeah?
Yeah, you know how it works, Steve. I mean, if you're struggling to do something, another team will test it. Now, they may not have the same blitz concepts, the same pressure concepts, but they'll have some of their own. They feel, J.C. Horn is obviously a really good player. He's the boundary corner. Michael Jackson is the field corner. He's a player teams have gone after with success. Trayvon Mayrig has been a really good player for them. He's the safety he's kind of their wild card movement safety. I think he's a really good player. I think their linebackers have been solid. Roseboom, you guys are familiar with, and certainly Michael Hoecht's familiar with him. He's a nice player. Trayvon Wallace, the second-year kid from Kentucky, is very athletic, and we know about their front. They play a lot of young players as pass rushers, so we'll see how they do against Dawkins and Spencer Brown. But it's a defense that I think's up and coming. I don't think it's as conceptually difficult as Atlanta's, but you're right, Steve. They will try some things just to see where the Bills stand in terms of protection.
Two numbers concerning Carolina's defense. They are last in the league in pressure rate. It's under 28%. And the other number, they are last in defensive DVOA against tight ends. They have trouble at the second level covering tight ends.
Yeah.
And Roseboom, I would say, is a liability in that area. So be interesting.
I would agree in coverage. Yeah, he's a good run player. Their edge snaps are young players. It's Skowron, a rookie. It's Princely, who's a rookie. Wanham is, I've always liked Wanham, but he's not a pure pass rusher, the way you think of a guy that you've got a game plan for. So, they don't rush the quarterback great. They're a team. Look, you started out by talking about Dowdle. They want to be able to control the pace and tempo of the game running the football, whether it's Dowdle, whether it's Hubbard, whether it's a combination of both. That's the way they want to play. They're not looking to get into a shootout. That's not the way they want to play.
Right.
Yeah.
Greg, good stuff. Thanks. Good seeing you.
All right, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, we'll catch up with you next week, Greg. Bills Mafia, it's tailgating season, and there's nothing better than an ice-cold Pepsi Zero Sugar to pair with your tailgating food rituals. As the great Josh Allen once said, Bills fans deserve Pepsi. Bills Mafia has brought it this season, and so is Pepsi. Bills tailgates deserve Pepsi. Go Bills. And you're right about the ball control, you and Greg, because the Bills and the Panthers, number 1 and number 2 in the league in time of possession.